From Radio DePaul, Chicago's college connection.
My father spent 3 years restoring this car. It is his love. It is his passion.
I'm Michael Cera, and human skin is my passion.
I learned to feel things I'd never felt before. Love, jealousy, passion for disemboweling.
Look at all the passion on that wall.
Well, jazz flute has always been a small passion of mine.
It's a bathroom.
It's not just a bathroom, David. It's a passion project.
My passion project. Destroying someone else's passion project.
This is Passion Project with your host, Peyton Basden.
Boo! Gotcha, guys. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to Passion Project. And this week's especially spooky episode, because I'm looking at the clock right now. I'm looking at the date and time. Guys, it's Halloween. As I'm speaking, it is Halloween, October 31st, and I am frightened. And I'm also really glad to be here in the studio again for another episode, a very exciting episode today. A little bit of a spooky episode. Ooh. Please don't get too scared. Okay. I would love for you to keep listening. If it gets too scary at any point, please just let me know. And I'll just so you know, nothing's real, okay? Nothing's actually happening. So don't get too spooked, okay? But speaking of spooky, speaking of scary, speaking of ooh, we've got a new person in the booth today. A new guest who I don't think you're very scary. I'll be honest.
I'm scared though because it is Halloween.
Yeah, and I feel like that comes across in your demeanor. I can tell you're frightened.
I'm shaking right now in the studio.
Yeah, you are, and it's scary. Who's here? Who do we have?
Well, hi there. I'm Connor Snow. I'm a student here at DePaul. I'm part of the Comedy Arts program.
Shout out.
I also do digital marketing. Shout out Jackie Kuehl.
I love Jackie.
And I have a passion for body horror.
Amazing, which is perfect for this Halloween-centric episode. It's a very great holiday, one of my favorites, top two, I think.
I think it might be my top one.
Oh, then it's so great that you're here to talk about it.
But if my family's listening, I love our Christmas party.
Yeah, Christmas is all about family and fun, but Halloween's all about letting loose, getting crazy, getting scary, dressing up. And in honor of Halloween, I have a special Halloween-themed passion probe for you, Connor. So I'm going to ask you a series of Halloween-related questions, and I'm going to need your very best answers.
All right.
And we'll start off pretty simple. We'll start off pretty easy. Do you think do you have a favorite candy? And do you have like a preferred candy to receive when you're trick-or-treating?
Do I have I think my favorite candy is probably like the Reese's brand of products. I love chocolate and peanut butter. I think that's also my favorite candy to receive as well, although sometimes they do get like smushed.
Right. There's something about the way specifically Reese's peanut butter cups are packaged that some are really good and some just like it's something with the way they're packaged. They're like really wet and soggy and strange. It only happens with the individual ones that you get for like Halloween and only in the traditional cups. It's confusing to me.
It's the longer cups I think that like also lend themselves to squishing. But I do love the Reese's Take 5 if you've had that.
I have had the Take. I love the Take 5.
Take 5, I think it's everything good about Reese's, and it's got like nougat in it as well.
It does, and a pretzel.
It's you get
sweet and
the
salty.
Best of 5 worlds.
Exactly, all in one little bite. I also appreciate that they're all pretty bite-sized. It's good for snacking.
But also, I will say, I did recently try something called a Charleston Chew before we started.
This was about 10 minutes ago. You had your first Charleston Chew.
10 minutes ago. And you said it was your favorite.
It's an all-time favorite of mine. If you freeze them and then you smash them up, you get these beautiful little Charleston Chew bits.
Oh, my goodness. That sounds like crush-ins for like ice cream.
Yes, it would be perfect for that. So if you want to grab one on your way out to take home and freeze, I would highly recommend it. Also to you, listeners at home, freeze your chews. It'll be good. Okay, so you locked in Reese's. Are you a Reese's or a Reese's person?
Reese's.
Okay. I appreciate your commitment to being correct.
Okay.
However, I grew up on Reese's.
Reese's.
Yeah.
Is there a correct? Like, did you ever research what's the correct?
I think the correct is Reese's because it's a guy. Like, it's a guy name. It's like his name, and then
Reese's
also like
Pieces.
See, I always called them Reese's Pieces, but not Reese's Pieces, which makes more sense, I guess. However, we'll agree to disagree.
Did you ever have the cereal?
Oh, I love Reese's Puffs. See, I call them Reese's Puffs.
I never had it as a kid, but I did have like the chocolate one. It's like Cocoa Puffs.
Cocoa Puffs, okay.
Goodness gracious. But
Those
never the Reese's.
Reese's Puffs were a staple. They do make the morning time epic.
So is your family a Reese's household?
Oh, yeah. Probably my favorite candy, too. I'm a little less... That's the thing, though, with Reese's, is that I always feel like I'm not getting enough. Like, they're gone too soon.
I also feel that way, too. I got, like, a huge bag of it, like, as part of, like, an Amazon Prime Day deal over the summer.
Wonderful.
Like, gone over, like, September.
That's a fantastic deal. I like the idea of you, like, wholesale buying Reese's off of Amazon.
That's my favorite part about Amazon is wholesale buying, just like, well, because you buy in bulk and it's like cheaper, supposedly.
Supposedly.
And then you don't have to go to the grocery. It just gets delivered to your house.
Exactly. In the tradition of trick or treating and Halloween, do you have a favorite costume that you've worn?
I mean, I like the costume I'm wearing right now.
Yes, you are dressed up currently.
I'm currently dressed up as Ruff Ruffman from the PBS show Fetch.
Oh,
and he's someone who's very dear to my heart. He was this animated dog, which also I was Scooby one year as well. That's another. I love animated dogs. Like why are they animated?
Right.
But Ruff Ruffman was a host of a game show for kids.
Okay.
And he'd like the game show is he would send these kids on like errands.
Mm-hmm.
And that was
the game.
show. That was the show. And he was very funny. He's my comedic inspiration.
So Ruff Ruffman, the animated dog, would interact with real life kids?
Well, he would talk to them through a TV screen. So I assume it was like pre-recorded bits. And yeah, it was real life kids, and he'd be like, "You three, you're gonna go. I need you to go get groceries for me because I'm out of groceries." Like it would genuinely be like, I'll show you one of these episodes one day, but it's genuinely stuff like that. But also, it was on PBS, so they'd have like some like science related things to it, where it's like, one of my groceries is eggs, and you got to do an egg drop.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, like protect the egg.
Were they mostly grocery based?
I don't think actually any of them were grocery based. There was some crazy ones where, like, the finale episodes were always crazy, and they were like 2-parters, like where all the kids, all 6 of them, there'd be like 6 per season, but only 3 would go on adventures. But in the finale, all 6 of them would do something. And one season, like they were pretty much like T for T, I think, doing the Da Vinci's Code.
Oh, awesome!
Plot line. But it was
Ruff Ruffman.
Yeah, and they had to do math though, because again,
PBS learning. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I am now. That's what I love about Halloween is you'll see somebody wearing a costume and you're like, I've never interacted with this piece of media before, and now I am compelled to go watch Ruff Ruffman.
I know. What do you think makes a good Halloween costume though? Like, does it have to be recognizable? Does it only have to be special to you?
I will always appreciate a Halloween costume that's personal more than one that's like, this is popular this year, so I'm going to dress up like that. I think a good Halloween costume is a good conversation starter, and it also lets you know who the real ones are. Like, I was walking here, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, is that Leon Kennedy?" And I'm like,
"No way."
Yes, it is. Congratulations. So that was like awesome, and it, like you find the real ones through this process.
No, you do, and that's who I'm trying to find. the real ones,
the Ruff Ruffman superfans,
the Ruff Ruffman, yeah, the people who want to bring it back and be on the show.
Mm-hmm. Like if you were dressed up as the Joker, I would have been like, "Oh, you're the Joker."
Yeah, I know. I feel like sometimes costumes like say something about a person. Like I really did like I dressed up as Patrick Bateman.
I remember,
2 years ago. But also I was like, people are gonna think I'm weird. People are gonna think I'm one of those people who is like, oh, I want to live Patrick Bateman's life, and I idealize him. I was just like, I have a suit, and I think he's funny. I enjoy it as a satire.
Yeah.
But also I was like, I feel like there's some people who would be like.
Yeah. There's a line to walk with Halloween costumes.
Mm-hmm.
In that realm, do you have a favorite piece of scary media? Is it American Psycho? Is it something even more dark and more twisted?
Oh my goodness, I really love more recently Ari Aster's stuff. Have you seen Hereditary?
I have not seen the full film, but I'm familiar.
I really like it a lot. I think it's just really it's a very tense movie. I really love Midsommar too, though, because I'm like, oh my god, like most of this movie's shot during the daytime, and it's still
frightening.
Still so frightening. I think also just a lot of the shots in that are beautiful. But Hereditary, I think it scared me the first time going around, but now, and it still I think is a scary movie. But now, I sometimes laugh at some of the moments in it just because a lot of it is so like ridiculous.
It's
times.
Absurd. There's a certain degree of absurdity in all the horror movies, which I think is very interesting. But like since it's horror, we're like, oh, we're afraid of it rather than like this is really funny. It's a whole thing that I think is interesting. Have you seen Beau is Afraid?
So
everyone I've talked to about it has a different opinion about this movie.
So I'm 21. I live in Illinois. Weed is legal here. I was, again, big Ari Aster fan. I went and saw it in theaters with a group of people, and I didn't love it.
Okay.
It's very much like it's like an art house film, and like I've seen Ari Aster has this short film called Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
Yeah, I have seen that.
You have seen that.
I have seen
so
that.
So that's where I feel like it's in the same vein where it's like it's so absurd, but I feel like with Beau is Afraid, it's like it's just too absurd for me. And the way that movie ends, it's just like, I mean, yeah. I was like, yeah, I guess that's how you end that movie. But also, I was like, what did I just spend? It's 3 hours too. It's around 3 hours. And I was high watching this thing, and I got bored. It's like I don't know.
Be better, especially considering your other films.
Yeah, what did you think on it?
I haven't seen it. I don't know if I should because some people love it. Some people are like, this is amazing. And other people are like, that made no sense. Because I remember when it came out, my roommate came home and he was like, that movie was crazy. It was awesome. But he liked it kind of, but also hated it.
My final statement I'll put on this is that I think there's certain movies that instead of trying to go narrative, they capture themes or emotions. Like, have you seen I Saw the TV Glow?
I have not, but I've heard great things.
Yeah, that's one of those movies where, I mean, I actually kind of did like that movie more, but there's not a really narrative. It's just supposed to make you feel a feeling. And the feeling Beau is Afraid is supposed to make you feel is anxiety.
Awesome.
Which is, like, if you want to feel that for, like, 3 hours and then maybe be bored for part of it.
Okay, that's a good sell.
That's my pitch on it.
And a little bored.
Yeah, don't go watch it in a theater. That's all I'd say. Watch it somewhere you can watch it relatively free.
Awesome. And lastly, Connor, this one's a little bit of a thinker.
Okay.
Which of the classic Universal monsters do you believe is the most relatable? Who do you think, whose story speaks to you? Are you a Dracula guy? Are you a Frankenstein's monster fan? Or are you a creature from the Black Lagoon?
Peyton, I'm going to be real with you. I feel like sometimes, don't we all just feel like the Invisible Man?
Connor, you've never said something more real in your entire life. That speaks to me.
That speaks. I mean, Frankenstein speaks to me in another way.
Right,
like,
right.
You know, like...
Because I can clearly tell you're like pieces of different people cobbled together.
Aren't we all, though?
Right. So true.
I guess if you look at all the Universal monsters, they're called Universal for a reason. Yeah, that's...
Wow. This is so beautiful.
But yeah, the Invisible Man, I think is cool because...
You are wearing glasses right now.
I am wearing glasses. And
mostly because of Rough Ruffman.
Mostly because of Rough Ruffman, but if you look at me, don't you only just see the glasses?
Right.
Like they're big and goofy, and the rest of me is like invisible.
Yeah, I just see straight through
I'm
you.
just a costume.
Yeah. What is the costume that we wear every day? Think about that. Aren't we all invisible? And don't we all suck blood?
do you feel like Dracula? Is that
I do. Dracula's my answer because I don't like
but
going
you go
outside
out in the
during
day.
the day.
You do go outside.
Yeah, but I
during
don't
the
like
day.
it. I get sunburned easily
That's true.
because of my acne medication. I get sunburned easily.
Sidebar: did I tell you that New Zealand has a hole in the
Oh.
ozone above it, and that you can literally get second-degree burns? Did you know that?
I did
For just
not.
standing outside. Yeah,
That's
something
interesting.
I learned,
Wow.
and
So-
that's my passion is sunburn.
That's
That'll
an
be
excellent
next,
passion.
Next episode.
I guess maybe you can go there and relate to Dracula more
Wow,
and just get really
I'm more of an
broiled in the sun.
Edward Cullen person, but
Oh yeah, you do sparkle. I
I
see
do.
a little shimmer right now under this indoor lighting. But Connor, that concludes our special Halloween themed probe. And now it's time to dig in to the main course of today. You're here to speak on a topic that's a little icky. It's a little gross. It's a little freaky and pretty scary. Body horror. So Connor, tell us more. What was your initial thought when you're like, I want to come on and speak to this?
Well, I think just initially that I think body horror gets kind of a sometimes a bad rap as just kind of like trashy. I mean, like what body horror movie do you think of when I say body horror?
When I can think of a lot of two come to mind. First, I think of Tusk.
Yes.
Which I think is a little it's a little campy and it's a little like it's deeper than just like gross. But like that's my first thought of like, oh, this is a gross movie for the sake of being gross. I guess I'll put that in the same camp as Human Centipede. But I think Tusk has a little more commentary. And the other one I think of is The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, which I think is a piece of art. And I think that movie uses body horror really, really effectively. And that's sort of like those practical effects and creature designs are phenomenal.
Yeah. I think the thing that really started making me really think about body horror was actually The Thing. I saw it in the Music Box Theater for the first time. It was so awesome. I went with my roommate at the time, Anton Dubois.
Shout out
Anton. And he had with him, he had a printed, so he's seen the movie before, but he wanted to really watch it the second time. So with him, he had a printed out like sheet of all the characters, so we could like find
keep track of where the Thing was.
Yes, yeah. For those of you who don't know The Thing, spoilers. The Thing involves this like alien that like disguises as people. It's kind of like I think it was inspired by Among Us, but in that
yes,
sense,
yes.
that one of them is the imposter.
There's an imposter,
but the alien shifts in between like people's bodies and becomes different people, so it can't really be tracked.
Yeah, that's sort of like a general overview. I don't want to get too into it because I think it's such an amazing film, and I don't want to spoil any of like the bigger reveals. But it's sort of like this general thing where like these people discover an alien. The alien can take whatever form it wants.
Yes,
and then it's sort of like this horror, like they're trapped in Antarctica,
like
with
all
this
alone.
being. Yeah, and it's like which one of us is an evil alien, which one isn't, and it does because it like pretends to be people, and then once it's like been found out, it'll transform into like different monsters.
It will
and,
like lash out,
yeah,
sort of, and like the body deforms, and then that's when the body horror, I think, comes in for certain people. I think the more iconic body horror from it is probably people have seen like a head and then it's just got spider legs.
Yes, the upside down like spider leg head, and it's got like two eyes coming out of the top.
Oh yeah,
which is really funny.
So goofy. But
it's also
horribly
frightening.
Yeah, the effects I will say still stands up to this day.
Yeah.
I will say I find it's one of the things I find funny now because it's like once you watch the movie once, then you're like, oh, that's fake. And you can kind of laugh at it. It is still horrifying.
Really well designed effects, like. And the beauty of it is that it's all practical. They, I believe 2011, they made a prequel to The Thing. And they started making that film with all practical effects, but then like budget cuts, whatever. And then they did all the effects with CG. And it just doesn't
it doesn't work.
Feel the same. There's something really visceral and really grotesque about the practicality of it. Yeah. I think when you put some of these effects through a computer, they feel too smooth. And in a way that like rawness and visceralness brings some of that like into it,
and that's that's something I want to touch on with body horror. Is I think the CG does take away from it because bodies aren't fluid, most of the time.
Yeah,
they're these clunky things we have to like deal with. And I feel like that's part of the horror. Is like we're not well-oiled machines.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've seen the trailer for this Thing prequel, and it's basically like seeing the whole movie. And I will say the CGI it just takes away from it.
Right, and it's because they're doing kind of all the same things that the first film did, but now on a computer, so it's like a little easier to see. They do get to do some more creative stuff with it. There are some interesting things that the Thing does that, like, okay, I could see you couldn't do this practically, and it's not like the creativity in the deforming of human bodies is like interesting to watch.
And isn't Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
She is.
She is in it.
She is in that one.
And I think they also I've maybe heard stuff for the woodwork, but that there might be they're trying to figure out a sequel for it.
I would. It's the Thing. It's its own. The Thing is its own thing. The movie was it 86, 80s? I don't know. It came out in the 80s. Was not super well received at the time. It was just kind of it came out I think like a week before Star Wars or something like that.
Yes. Or no.
It was a week before.
I think it was like a family-friendly movie.
Yeah, it was a week before another movie, and everyone's like, "Oh, we're gonna go see that movie." It was a big movie, and so like at the time, people were kind of like, "Oh, this is pretty good, I guess." But like the cult following it's gained over the years, that's why the prequel happened in 2011 because people were like, "Oh, we should capitalize it," and people like loved it. They're like, "Awesome!" I think it's one of the best horror movies ever made.
I think so too because it also touches on another aspect of body horror, which is the fact that we're all human and we all have bodies. I feel like it is also it's like a microcosm of humanity as well,
right?
Because it's its own sort of community there, even though they are in isolation. But because of that isolation, all of our problems become much bigger because there's not as many of us.
And isn't the scariest thing what people do to each other when they're afraid? Yeah. Think about that. It's in the movie. It's all over the place in the movie. I won't say what happens.
It is, and they do a lot of thinking.
They do a lot of thinking.
Although I think Kurt Russell does a lot more acting.
Yeah, Kurt Russell's
that's why
really
we
the
love
actor.
Kurt.
That's why we love Kurt Russell. He makes no mistakes in that movie. None at all.
No. I don't think so. He played a perfect character.
He did.
I also really love the ending of that movie.
Yes, it's a great movie. Go watch this. Some may say perfect movie. I'm okay with that. Go watch this perfect movie.
You mentioned Tusk.
I did. Let's talk about Tusk.
I think it's very. I really did like that you brought up that Tusk and Human Centipede. You say Tusk has a little bit more commentary.
Because Tusk came out in a post-Human Centipede world.
I
There's
guess
a before
and
an after.
I guess that's true. I wonder if anything has like come out in a post-Sharknado world in that sense, and like has more. Maybe Twisters.
Yeah,
maybe Twisters with
Glenn Powell.
But Tusk, I think the difference between Tusk and Human Centipede is a lot more commentary. Human Centipede, I feel like, is more of what people think of when they think like kind of body horror, kind of the trashy of like, well, what if we just did something horrible to people?
Yeah, and then like that's as far as the movie goes.
Yes.
It's like, isn't this a horrible thing that can happen?
And
that's it.
I think that is an aspect of body horror of like, oh, what we all have bodies, and that doesn't make us like immortal, and horrible things can happen to them. But it's just like there's no exploration of the concept. It's just like, let's watch these people suffer in these horrible conditions. Whereas with Tusk is a fantastic movie. It's one of, I think, the first A24 movies. And the concept of it is, I believe it was a journalist gets sort of kidnapped by this one dude, and he his kidnapper slowly turns him into effectively a walrus. Yeah, which awesome concept.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I also I like how whoever wrote that movie they were like, what is like the most horrible, like horrifying creature you could be turned into? And then was like, walrus. Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, walruses are just built different, built in a scary way.
For the record, I will say walruses are my favorite animal.
Really?
Which is
so. Did you
kind of
really
awesome.
love that movie?
I was like,
you were like,
this is good walrus representation on screen.
Were you like, my dream?
Yeah, I was like, he's living how I want to live. I wish to be a walrus.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who said that their favorite animal is a walrus. Normally, it's like closest thing is maybe manatee, but that's just like people in Florida.
Yeah, that's
spiritual connection.
Don't get me started on manatees and walruses.
Have you seen a walrus in real life?
I have. It's awesome. The dreaded Sea World.
Oh,
that's where they.
Is there
keep
one
them.
around here?
No, they don't
Cleveland?
have one around here.
Oh.
I've been to Shad and I've been to the Lincoln Park Zoo. Neither have them.
So you went in like California or something?
SeaWorld Orlando. Many years ago. 10+ years ago at this point. I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah.
But there was a walrus there.
Yeah, and the walrus in the movie Tusk he has his own enclosure too.
Yeah.
But the way that he turns into a walrus is his body's just slowly like modified. Until like he's like this weird flesh walrus too.
He's a walrus made of people.
Yeah. I guess that's also important to mention. But and it really is body horror because I think one of the central aspects of body horror is that it's like you don't have control really over your body.
Right.
Like no one does. And like sure you know, that doesn't mean that like anyone is willing to be like anyone could be kidnapped at any time and turned into
That's not a super real threat.
I would prefer a giraffe. Maybe.
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool. I've seen it. But it is like your body can get like modified at any time, and you literally have no control over it.
Right.
And I think that is like such a scary human thing because you know we live up here in our heads.
Yeah,
that's where the consciousness like resides.
Yeah.
And it's like from this perspective, it's like I'm just like living, I'm just going. And then like whenever something serious like actually happens to your body, or whenever you have to go to the doctor, get your wisdom teeth removed, you're like,
right, it's freaky.
It is freaky. It's also like it's freaky to like whenever you like disassociate and you're like, oh my god, I'm feeling stuff too.
It's like, oh wow, I'm here, I'm real. Like, what? How do I control this sack of flesh that I'm like piloting?
And then you can also get so many like diseases to the sack of flesh with like, and you have no control over it. Like there's a lot of like mental things you can like think over, but like this is like the one. This is it. This is your body, and it is the horror. Because you're literally spit out, and this is the one you have, and even like sometimes your consciousness is not safe.
Right.
I know I have like OCD tendencies, and it's like sometimes I'll just get like thoughts just because of how the way that my brain is built, and sure I can like circumvent them. It's like sometimes our friend Lee calls this the monster, and it really is sometimes because it's like kind of like a monster. You gotta like mentally fight back, just like spitting thoughts at you,
right? And
there's no real feasible way that I can like edit this right now,
right?
And that's somewhat a little scary.
I think the reason we love horror movies in general is it's sort of like there's that level of catharsis and that level of exploration of like, oh, it feels good to be scared, and then to like come out on the other side of it and like feel okay. Body horror specifically allows us to combat all those fears that have to do with like our physical being. One I think a very solid recent example, The Substance has been making waves.
Oh yes.
Which I would classify as very like it is so body horror. It is so icky and gross, and it's all that commentary to do with like aging and like growing older and like what happens to our bodies as we get older, and like what are we willing to do to get that back, and then like it's confronting that fear, it's confronting that like mortality, which I think is really interesting, and that's something that body horror allows us to do.
I know. I think actually, I haven't seen The Substance yet. I've heard about it, and have you?
I've not seen the movie in its entirety.
And it's
shout out TikTok clips.
Of
The
gosh,
Substance.
is that? Oh gosh, is that how you're watching things?
Is
that how you watched Hereditary?
Perhaps.
Probably so. Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah.
Who's to say? Let's not worry about mediums.
Yes, let's talk about The Substance, which I think is a great use of body horror because that is aging is scary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, aging just like in general, not even getting old. Puberty is sometimes scary.
Yeah.
And like hormones is like, what is happening to my body? And you go through like a hormone cycle, and you're like,
my favorite body horror film is the hit Pixar movie Turning Red.
Turning Red. Oh my god! I thought you were gonna say Inside Out. That's what's on my brain.
That's also body horror.
Inside Out 2.
Yeah, that movie's scary.
I don't want new emotions invading my brain.
No, I'm afraid of anxiety. I'll say it. Maya Hawke anxiety.
Maya Hawke. I'm afraid of like nepotism anxiety. That's what gets
stuff.
Me. But yeah, I think puberty is a very it's like we all go through it. We all have bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's very uniting at
It is.
times as well. Like you said, it's catharsis through
Mm-hmm.
horror as well. And I think part of the substance, the catharsis in The Substance is probably, oh, hey, like, yeah, aging is bad, but at least I'm not in this situation.
Exactly. It's nice to know that somebody has it worse and somebody's been turned into a walrus or somebody's been, like, stitched to the end of another person in a long chain. A centipede, if you will. It's not that bad. Don't worry. Your life could be worse.
I also think it's interesting that those two examples you mention are centipede and walrus are both things in nature that have just like naturally evolved.
Mm-hmm.
They also have no control over what they're doing and like their bodies, which I think is interesting that both filmmakers were like, yeah, what if people were animal?
Mm.
And that was the concept.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting because, like, in a lot of Disney movies, mainly just Brave, like people turn into animals and then they just chill with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some animals, they experience body horror.
Oh,
I feel one of the craziest things. I was obsessed with bugs when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And in New Orleans, where my family is, they have this place called the Insectarium.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this one exhibit where there's like a cabinet, and if you're a kid, you can crawl in under it.
Mm-hmm.
And you go up into this glass dome, and there's a bunch of cockroaches around you. And it's like the inside of a food cabinet.
Ooh.
Something I learned from that I was like, oh, that's pretty freaky, was so cockroaches can live days without their head.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. This is
this.
General fact. Do you know, like, why?
No.
So, it is because so if they lose their head, they still have a breathing hole.
Oh.
But their nervous system, I don't think, is, like, centralized. So they can keep on breathing for, like, I think it's like a week is the thing. But the reason why they eventually die is because they need their head to eat.
Oh. Wow.
Which, can you imagine metamorphosis if that was the end?
Truly Kafkaesque.
Truly Kafkaesque. It did freak me out. I think that's one of the first things that really started like freaking me out about death. Was like, I was like, so that's like literally, I don't know. That's a fate worse than death to me. Is just being able to breathe for a week straight and then
not
die.
Eat.
Yeah, and then not eat. Which I guess can segue into another body horror story that's a favorite of mine, which is I have no mouth, but I must scream. Do you know this?
I'm lightly familiar.
Lightly familiar. It's originally a short story. It got adapted into a pretty fun point-and-click game.
Oh, awesome.
Which I'm about to tell you I'll tell you why I think that is so funny and why it's such an appropriate adaptation of the short story. The short story basically goes is that AI basically takes over humanity, which shout out.
Oh yeah, which is happening right now. Look outside.
I want to say that AI is fantastic and I love it. And,
that's true. It's only done good things.
It's only done good things, and I look forward to the future where there are overlords. And I want to, again, on the record, say AI fantastic. No qualms. AI takes over the entire human race and then kills everyone except for these 5 people. And then he genetically modifies their bodies in certain ways. Well, he genetically modifies all of them to be able to survive without food, yet they still experience hunger.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's these 5 people, and they basically travel what's left of the Earth after the AI took over. The AI's name is AIM.
AIM?
Yeah. Or I think I totally did butcher that. But it leaves these 5 people alive. They wander the Earth. They're always hungry, and they can never find food. And that is something that he made intentionally, kind of as their new god.
Oh.
And he modifies some of them just to. He modifies this one guy who used to be a philosophy professor or something, and he modifies him to have to be a Neanderthal. He I think winds back his DNA. And so he still is the same person, but he just has Neanderthal mind.
Interesting.
And so he gets really angry and frustrated all the time because he can't express himself, which, maybe there's some commentary on, masculinity in there. But, yeah. And so basically what happens is, all these people are just, toyed with by the AI, and that's how they live life. And it's, horrible. Until one day they try to overthrow the AI. They basically I forget, they collect these ancient relics or something, or it's there's a shut off switch.
Awesome.
And which I think is awesome in the point and click game. The reason why I think the point and click is the perfect format for this, because it's point and clicks to me are needlessly tedious sometimes and take forever. And it's it's an old 90s point and click, which are horribly obtuse, and it's you're being tortured by AI. It's
while
fantastic.
Playing the game. That's called immersion.
Immersion. It's a good adaptation. Eventually, they try to overthrow the AI, and the AI doesn't like it, and so he kills them all off. Except for one guy who he genetically deforms again into just this snail-like creature. Genuinely a snail, I think. Just makes him snail-shaped. And he has eyes, and he's had these huge ears, but he has no mouth. And therefore he cannot scream about the predicament, which I always thought is an amazing twist to the story, because it's man, being hungry all the time would suck. And then the cap to the story is now you can't even talk to anyone. All you can do is listen. How horrible.
That's a fate worse than death. Not being able to yap anymore.
Only
listen.
Only podcast only.
Yeah. You know how I feel about podcasts. The most evil medium ever.
But yeah, I always think that is another great body horror story, because I think it speaks to the aspect of I totally think it was written by some Christian dude.
Really?
Maybe even a Catholic, some Catholic guilt dude who was who was oh God. Or no, maybe even Presbyterian, predestination people, where it's you're put on this earth by a God. You're given this body. And you have no choice but to suffer no matter what, and just listen to the world around you.
Life
Someone's worldview. Not mine, but it's also I look at that story always as man, it could be worse, and goodness gracious, I hope AI doesn't get too smart.
Yeah.
I hope it's a kind and gracious AI we have in the future.
Maybe it'll give us more mouths and more food.
Maybe so.
That would be a true gift.
I think one of the last things I'll talk about is this book called All Tomorrows, which isn't necessarily actually body horror. It was written by this guy who was a big fan of speculative evolution, which is sort of like, what will creatures look like in the future? He also has and he wrote a book about that. He was like, what would like creatures look like if like humanity disappeared? I got down this rabbit hole because I watched this TV show as a kid called The Future is Wild. It was on Nat Geo Kids.
You think that was a good platform for this? Is it good kids content?
Okay, so this wasn't necessarily the plot of this show was like some humans in the future have a time machine, but they're like living in the Ice Age. Like it might be because of global warming. It might be like one of those like day after tomorrow scenarios.
Right.
And they use the time machine. They go back to the early 2000s accidentally because they're trying to find like a new home for humanity that isn't like Snow World. And so they accidentally go back to the 2000s. They pick up like these 2000s kids, and then they kind of like Scooby-Doo gang. Like they go visit like different future, not different futures, the same future, but at like different points in time to like try to find a habitable home for like the future of humanity who's stuck in the Ice Age. And in this series, each episode they're in like a different future, a different environment, and it's all speculative evolution, which is like I think one of the craziest aspects of the series is, and it's all kind of based off of like scientists or whatever saying like this is what it be, and is that the next life form to like evolve intelligence will be cephalopods or like squids and octopuses. And they talk about how in what was formerly known as California, like they have these things called squibbins. They're called in the show, and one of them becomes sort of like the Scooby to their Scooby gang. And it's this like squid that has a shell on its back, and it swings like a monkey.
Oh.
And yeah, the show is just full of like speculative, like, oh, what could the future be like that? Guy who sort of helped write the original book for that. He also made a speculative future called All Tomorrows, speculating what the future of humanity might look like. And he talks about how we'll eventually like colonize Mars, which like, shout out Musk.
Woo!
And on Mars, like humans slowly, like Martians become like their own sort of species of humans just because their bodies become modified by like, I think like the lower gravity there and all that. And that's like the first half of the book, or first like third, more so. There's a PDF online for free for those of you interested. And then what happens is when they colonize Mars, they're about to become like a truly like starfaring civilization, and they really do start to expand in this guy's idea of the future until we encounter a race called the Q. And they're sort of like this higher power even above us, and they fight a war with us, and we lose horribly. And then as punishment, you'll never guess what they do. They
genetically modify us?
They genetically modify us. I'm glad you've been following. And into all just like these, like literally just from the author's perspective, they do it just like for fun, sort of. And there's all these different sorts of new humans that come out of it. I have a few listed. One of them is the Finger Fishers.
Oh.
Which is a group of humans that are modified to have really long fingers. And then they fish with those fingers. Honestly, peaceful life.
Yeah.
There's also another group called the Flyers, which are just, they're all just kind of like humans. Like but like one aspect of them is like terribly blown out of proportion. And these guys just have like skin flaps of wings, and like at first they can't actually really fly, but like over evolution and over like time, they start
flying.
Yeah, they start being able, because how evolution works and all that.
Yeah.
They start being able to like fly.
Awesome.
Which like I wish I could fly.
I wish I could fish with my fingers. This is actually sounding pretty cool.
I know. Until we get to some of kind of the bad ones.
Oh no.
Well, there's tons of bad ones that are just like, what if we gave this guy a long neck? Or what if we gave him really big hands? And they all kind of like die off in the book.
Because it's not an evolutionary advantage.
Apparently not. Apparently big hands
is not helpful.
There are some other ones that are like more crazy. They have like, there's two different ones that live in the ground called, there's the worms, which are self-explanatory. You're just a worm.
Oh, wow.
They can't see. And then they also have these ones I think called like they're like called the flat people in the book, where it's just like literally they're like flounder fishes, like, you know, the ones at the bottom of the sea, and they have eyes like facing up towards the sun, and they don't do so hot, but they survive for a bit. And then some other ones, there's this group of ones called the parasites, which are just made really, really tiny, and they can only they just feed off of other living beings. Eventually, as the generations pass, on the same planet that they're on, there's a group of genetically modified humans that are like, I think they're just made to be like really dumb, but like they have like kind of bodies. Oh, now I remember what it was. It's that they're aphrodisiacs, I believe. And they just have chemicals, hormones in their brains all the time that just make them want to procreate all the time. And a lot of them do die out because all they want to do all the time is procreate. But the parasites eventually form a symbiotic relationship with them. So they can actually be more productive. But the worst fate of them all, I think of mine in the book, is these guys called the colonials. It's these humans that are turned into basically bricks, and then they're stacked into pyramids and like monuments and stuff to the Q, which is again that alien race. And their whole job is they just act as a filtration system for the Q's waste. And it's these individual bricks of humans which are all still conscious. Again, most of the humans this is sort of like punishment. It's yeah, and so all the humans like still have like kind of memories, but again, it's sort of like even with the colonials, these brick people, it's I have no mouth but I must scream situation, where it's like they know like the war that they fought, but instead of dying, they're trapped in these like terrible like they're just toilets. Wow. In the true sense of the word. But they all live together, and you still get to be with your buddies.
Okay, yeah. We're all a pyramid together now.
There's a good end to this book, though. It was eventually like some humans who were like isolationists, just like slowly, like in the darkness, sort of brought about revolution, and then they eventually met up with all the genetically modified humans, and they formed like a little federation, a galactic federation, and they eventually beat the Q. And at the end of the book, there's this really beautiful quote that the author leaves, which is, "Love today and seize all tomorrows." Very simple.
Wow.
But I think it speaks to just like the body. It's not really a body horror book. I think it was just this guy being
horrible
like,
things happen to bodies.
What if we had like wings? Or
what if we were bricks?
What if we were bricks? Because some animals live like that, but I think it's very beautiful that it's because it's like we have this like one body, but you can't like really, you can't be entrenched in it because it's glass half empty, glass half full.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do.
Right.
So just live in today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about if 2 years down the line we're all going to be bricks.
Exactly. AI generated bricks.
AI generated bricks, yeah. But yeah, no. And bricks aren't even that bad because, sponges are just a bunch, or not even sponges, corals are a bunch of like little creatures living in a colony. And
yeah.
They're chilling.
They're chilling. Maybe we'll become a lot like coral. Connor, I regret to inform you our time is near coming to a close.
Mm-hmm.
However, would you like to take these last few moments to impart wisdom upon our listeners? Beyond that quote that will carry me through the rest of my days and will bring me hope in times where I feel like a brick.
Well, I think that, you just got to look and realize through all the body horror that things sometimes really can be worse.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think people should appreciate body horror more because it's like, it is, I think, very relatable and very human. And it is not something we should always be scared of. Maybe sometimes we can even laugh at it. Because I hate to bring up the brick again, but yes, that is horrifying, but isn't that also a little bit hilarious?
It is. It is. I love brick.
I love brick too.
Connor, thank you so much for coming on today's episode and sharing with us your passion.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And happy Halloween, right?
Yes, happy Halloween. In honor, go watch The Thing. It's a freaky movie. It's gross. It's awesome.
I would totally also watch it in theaters if
you can.
If you want, I'm I think https.snow on Instagram.
On Instagram.
I'll come with you. I'll have a sheet of all the characters.
Yeah. That's a true way to watch it.
I'll be taking notes the whole time if you get confused.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hit him up. He'll explain any movie to you if you would like a guide. That's a service he offers. Connor, thank you so much.
My Letterboxd.
Oh yes, follow him on Letterboxd,
which I will not be giving away.
No, you gotta earn that one.
I will tell you, I have a pretty high review on Jackpot, starring Awkwafina and John Cena.
Now I want to find your Letterboxd. Maybe after the show we'll compare notes. But after today's show, y'all go do something scary, get some candy, and have the best Halloween of your life. Thank you so much again, Connor.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, listeners. It's been a pleasure. Have a happy Halloween and stay passionate.
Scary. Something I didn't talk about on the show, but I think is still very scary. Mosquitoes.
Ooh.